My
Okay.
objection with all of these documentaries, including this one, is if they included my influence continuum and bite model and had, a deconstruction of the mind control techniques used, then it would serve the public much better. And I even said that to Christine. Maybe we can record something that can be a supplemental part to the documentary, a postscript.
If you've been scrolling through Netflix lately, you've probably seen Trust Me, the False Prophet, sitting at the very top of the charts. I'm Arshi Qureshi, digital news reporter for the US Sun, and this groundbreaking documentary has reignited the conversation online around religious cults. The four-part series follows cult psychology expert Christine Murray and her husband, who bravely embedded themselves inside a fractured FLDS community to take down the abusive, self-proclaimed prophet Samuel Bateman. By pretending to film a promotional project, the couple secretly captured hundreds of hours of raw, incriminating footage that ultimately became the centerpiece of an FBI investigation. To help us make sense of Bateman's mind-bending control tactics, we are joined by an accomplished cult expert who actually lived through his own cult ordeal and escaped to tell the tale. Forensic psychologist and author Dr. Stephen Hassan. From his own past survival story within the Unification Church to helping law enforcement dismantle dangerous networks, Dr. Hassan has spent decades studying how bad actors like Bateman work to manipulate minds. But before we jump into our interview, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We are on our way to reaching 20,000 subscribers, but we need your help to get there. Let's get it. As you know, this latest documentary on FLDS has come out, and it has reignited the conversation around religious cults in America.
Mm-hmm.
And you being expert, and you have spent considerable amount of your time, in reading about cults, and everybody knows you're pretty famous regarding it. Like yesterday I saw your Trevor Noah interview as well.
Uh-huh.
It was really fun, to be honest.
Okay, cool. I
Uh,
love him. He's great.
and also, so as you know about Samuel Bateman, like what was it that why did he maintain so much of power?
I first started studying trafficking, labor trafficking, and sex trafficking, and he was put in jail for sex trafficking. So it's pertinent to the story. In 2010. And I started interviewing former sex trafficking survivors. And as a cult expert, I had read a chapter in, I think it was Rachel Lloyd's book on prostitution in Las Vegas. She had a chapter on pimps, and she said, look at Steve Hassan's combating cult mind control, because all the criteria he talks about with cults and cult leaders fits. And long story short is it fits. And I actually did a panel connecting trafficking as a commercial cult. I think it was 2011, and Christine Marie was on my panel. She had gotten out of her own trafficking situation with a guy. She had converted to Mormonism. He claimed to be a prophet, and he was sex trafficking her. So I've known her, seeing her get out, traumatized by the media, become a professional. I actually did my doctorate at the same university, and at my university, you need a student reader, not just professors on your doctoral committee. I asked her to be my reader.
Yeah.
So we've been in touch all along. And so when Christine said, Tolga and I are going to move there, I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, I have a heart for these people. And, their profits are gone, and they have no education. Women they don't have access to computers or anything. And I just feel like I'm supposed to be there. So I've been in touch with her all along. Then she said, Steve, there's a cult that's forming, and I think I'm going to infiltrate it. And now we're getting the FBI. So I've been hearing
Yeah.
about this all along. So I just want to say I'm so proud of her because the whole effort was so empowering for her as an activist
Yeah.
and as an educator. And she helped save
Yeah.
people's lives. And Gnomes is a beautiful this explication of the most fanatical devotee of Bateman. And
Yeah.
Bateman took over because he said Jeffs was dead. And
Yeah.
these people had been born in a cult. And other than knowing Christine Marie,
They
they were
didn't know.
pretty ignorant about it.
Why do you think, like even though like Samuel Bateman, he is in jail, but he still has wives, the elder wives who still believe in him. While like a lot of younger ones, they got out of it and they're doing their own stuff. But these women who are already there, why is it happening? Like why is he maintaining so much power still?
So there are people who still believe in Keith Raniere, even though he was put in jail for 120 years. And so people don't understand fundamentally what brainwashing is or what mind control is. There's a lot of incorrect information out there. The
Yeah.
best way I explain it to people is it's a dissociative disorder. And there's a very big difference between people born or raised as early in early childhood in a cult and people recruited later
Hmm.
in life into a cult. When you're born into a mind control cult, you don't have a reference for what's normal. You don't know how the rest of the world, I mean, you're programmed to think the outside world is evil and
Yeah.
satanic, even though the FLDS was living off of government food and subsidies and all of
Yeah.
that. Um, so they never got a chance to develop their authentic self. They
Hmm.
never got a chance to learn history or science or how to think critically, etc. So um, when it comes so the outside world thinks, oh, he was convicted, so everyone should just realize he's bogus. Doesn't work that way. Identity doesn't work that way. And the women who are still believing, if they watch the documentary, I predict they would be leaving. It may take them a while, but
Hmm.
they would leave. And if the community that they left, the FLDS community that remained, remember, they turned on Christine Marie because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
thought that she was supporting Bateman.
Yeah.
So unless they, and a lot of them don't have TVs. So unless they watch the documentary, it's going to be, and they may. I mean, if I
Yeah.
had my way, I'd be encouraging people to donate, cable TV to the, you know, and show it everywhere. And maybe Christine Marie will. I've been wanting to. I talked with her briefly when it first came out, and I
Hmm.
invited her to come, do a live stream with me, and she said, sure. She's coming back. She's been visiting out of the country, but so she'll be doing that in the near future.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, when you're programmed to believe something, the human beings are dependent on information.
Hmm.
And what I say in my TEDx talk, how can I know if I've been brainwashed? The first, and the link to it is on my website too.
Okay.
Um, the first step is always to take a time out and disconnect from whatever you think is unduly influencing you, just as a beginning step. Because once you're not constantly being reinforced, and
Hmm.
my guess is the women are reinforcing each other and using the same thought stopping techniques, the same phobia programming, etc. But once one starts questioning, there'll probably be a contagion effect that will happen as well.
There are men as well in these. communities, and they are working men because they might have some kind of, work, but they themselves are also influenced, and they are influenced to an extent that they are ready to, ready to basically give their children, or, you know, a little girl, or like their women, to these men who would then sexually exploit them. So what's like women, I mean, I don't want to say like I understand like it's anyway wrong, but even men who are, are connected to the outside world, are working, how do they get
Well, a
influenced?
lot of them are working for companies owned by the cult, so I wouldn't think that they're
Okay.
working for outside companies. They're usually doing construction or something related to the organization and such. Um, so I'm not sure if I understand your question. Is the question of how can men believe
Yeah,
this
I mean, yeah,
stuff
that's what
too?
but you said it like, because they work with the same cult company. So that's why it's,
Right, but also understand something that, and I was in the Moonies, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
even though I got recruited at 19 and I had an identity, etc., and that's why I can talk so clearly
yeah,
about it. I wasn't in that long. It was 2.5 years, but it was still a long enough
yeah,
time to know the feeling. But when you are programmed to believe that a human being is God's agent on earth, and your salvation only comes through your relationship with the prophet, quote
yeah,
unquote. Um, you'll do whatever you're told because in the mindset, if you look at the T of the bite model,
yeah.
the
So,
ideology is always simplistic, black and white, us versus them, good versus evil. So there's not a lot of gray area to say
mhm.
maybe I'll trust the prophet, maybe I'll believe what they say. And they grew up believing in Warren Jeffs as the prophet, and so they just transferred that allegiance to
But is
Bateman.
it, but is it also, like, I'm not sure whether you believe in religion when you were 19, were you an atheist, or like you believed in religion, because that
No,
comes.
I was Jewish. I believed in
Okay.
Judaism. I did not believe in the God that I was
Yeah.
exposed to as a youth before my bar mitzvah, a God that was judgmental and hardened the Pharaoh's heart and
Mhm.
killed all these people, etc. So I belong to a Jewish community. We have a female rabbi, conservatively ordained, which I would add the current regime in Israel.
Mhm.
The ultra Orthodox people look at me and say, I'm not a Jew. And they don't respect women rabbis at all, right? So for me, they're cultists. Um, they're extremists. They're authoritarians as well. Um, but no, I was educated about the Holocaust. I worked at a archaeological dig in Israel. So and the whole religious freedom issue that a lot of the cult propagandists who are sociologists of religion say you can't criticize religion. It's
Yeah.
like the Moonies, the group that I was in, violated my religious freedom by lying to me and taking over my mind. They didn't say we're a religious group that believes Moon is the Messiah and we believe the Holocaust was justified. If they said that in the first 10 minutes, I never would have had a further
Yeah.
conversation with them. But they lied. They said they were students and they weren't. They said they weren't religious at all.
So
And
that got you.
so they hacked me.
So is that common way to lure someone, when you talk nicely and
Well, the people have this image of cult members having horns or they're evil people. No, they're nice, warm, and there's often, flirting, and you think you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's interested in you. That was my vulnerability. My girlfriend had dumped me, and three women flirted with me and love bombed me. Um, and they lied to me again. It's like if they said, we don't believe in premarital sex and we don't believe in even masturbation, it's a crime, I would have been like, excuse me, I'm 19. I can't do this. you know.
But okay, so like you've all okay, once there is, there is a religious cult, but then you also talk about, how social media and tech can also lure you into a cult. So, how different is that from, someone like Bateman or, the FLDS community for these people? Like, can you differentiate between that? Like one is social media and tech,
Well,
and then
sure, I can differentiate it. I mean, I'm a
yeah,
forensic expert, so that's my business is to differentiate. But what people need to understand is in the digital age, you no longer need to physically isolate someone to brainwash them. If
yeah,
you're on a social media platform for 8 hours a day, you're being sleep deprived, you're going into hypnotic states and they're constantly putting ideas in your head. You have to turn off your phone for a week or two to disconnect. It's a different age that we're living in now, and people are being made more radical on the progressive left side and the right side.
hmm,
It's no longer clear. And the other thing I want to say is healthy, legitimate religions tell you who they are, what they believe, and what they want from you before they invite you to join. You have what's called informed consent. Cults
but
don't give informed consent. So if you
mm,
look at the eye of the bite model, there's overt lying, there's deliberately withholding vital information, or there's distorting information to make it palatable.
mm,
So again, it's like if you believe in fundamental human rights and you believe in the importance of the conscience,
yeah,
and critical thinking and how you are for freedom of speech, but also freedom to read whatever you want to read and talk to whoever you want to talk to.
mm,
Authoritarian cults are all against that. They want to
yeah,
make you over in their image, and they want you to think the right way and feel the right way and act the right way, their way,
yeah.
which is not your way.
But do you think like there's something about American culture? See, like I'm not from here, I'm from India. So for me coming over here, I mean, I know like even back in India, there is like, two political parties. One believe in right-wing Modi regime, one believes in Congress.
Sure.
What is it, that make people, why do they join here? Like, what is it that make people distrust in authority, religion, or, any focus on individual freedom, basically? So that makes it
So
easier.
people are kept in a state of ignorance about influence. So I wrote in The Cult of Trump, I said, we have to go back to 1928 and Edward Bernays and his book Propaganda if we
Mm,
want to understand how America voted for this creep twice, who is so obviously deranged and a malignant narcissist and criminal. Um, and I blame the government, both Democratic and Republican administrations, because we know the CIA did research into mind control and MK Ultra in the 50s and 60s, but they've never said a word to the American citizens since.
mm.
And so people
It,
like me are who understood the Moonies were a project with the CIA and the Korean CIA,
yeah.
who've been saying, hello, this has gotten more and more sophisticated over time. And the people who want, whether it's the oil industry or big tobacco or big pharma, they want to sell you stuff and they don't want you thinking analytically and critically about it. They want consumerism for the economy and just, for their own greed and power, etc. So that's one major factor of why in America people are so gullible. Madison Avenue and marketing and advertising, they're
Yeah.
all over social psychology research and neuroscience. They're doing eye tracking. They're doing, not even asking people anymore, would you buy this product or if you see this commercial, which one works more, motivates you? They don't even ask anymore. They just hook you up and show you them. And they're going with the data of what they're trying to elicit in your mind. And it's not critical thinking, I can assure you.
So there's a
It's
difference between, sorry,
it's
you,
it's making you feel like there's something wrong with you, that you
yeah,
need this product and then you'll be loved, and do this product and then you'll be viewed as a success, or you'll have value if you smell the right way and you have the right watch on, etc. So there's this whole framework of undue influence in the United States. But the other thing I want to say is that in Europe, they actually have laws for evaluating nonprofit status of religious groups. You have to show that your major effort is to help the community.
yeah,
In the US, if you apply to the IRS and say, "Hi, I had a vision. Jesus spoke to me last night, and I'm starting a church of Stephen Hassan," and you pay a lawyer to lobby, you're a religion. And there's no checks and balances. There's no holding people accountable.
consumerism is more like a cult because,
It's the cult of marketing. It's a
mm,
very big business.
but there's a difference between like, political consumerism and religious.
So think about it. Why do these campaigns raise hundreds of millions of dollars? Well, they're buying advertising and
Yeah,
marketing and social media influencers. That's how they get people elected.
yeah,
And so there are industries that sell television ads. They want it to keep coming because they depend on that revenue. Or the marketers
mhm,
want to keep their jobs, etc. So there's a whole, unfettered capitalism. Like, I'm
yeah,
for capitalism, but there needs to be regulation. And
that's
I'm
true.
for technology, but it needs to be
Like,
regulated.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the US is like, no, we don't. And but they spend billions on lobbying and buying
mhm,
off politicians by paying for their campaigns. There used to be you had to wait 2 years after you left a government position before you could
yeah,
work for industry. That's gone. So people are going into government so they can make a lot of money
yeah,
for
yeah.
industry. It's so corrupt.
And also, I want to ask, like, are there any red flags, whether you can see for your friends or relatives, like if they're getting into cult, like what kind of red flags you should watch for?
You mean in terms of someone getting
Into-
radicalized
Yeah,
into a cult?
yeah,
Sure. So the main thing, and I've been encouraging people to spend less time online and more time with family and friends in real life, like actually know your neighbors, cultivate, book clubs and playing mahjong and other things where you can be with human beings. That's really, really, valuable and important. And for families, inoculation is the critical thing. And I've been calling for public health emergency
mm,
when Biden was in power. We need to inoculate the American citizens. And my influence continuum and bite model is the most logical, simple way to teach people how to tell the difference when they're listening to a source
yeah,
on how to reality test. So the red flags are everything from a radical personality change, the person spending a lot of time away.
yeah,
They're either become excessively proselytizing to you or they become very secretive. They're
mm,
spending a lot of money as well as time. And the mistake 99% of the public makes when they see that behavior in someone is they say, Archie, are you in a cult? Are
Yeah.
you being brainwashed? And then Archie's like telling the people at the group, my sister's thinking, asking me if I'm brainwashed, right? And now all of a sudden they start amping up on you about how the outside world is persecuting you. They're ignorant. They're trying to
Yeah.
take away your free will and all these other bogus things.
That's what in India, like politically, like Hindu majority is like, you're in constant fear, like other people are taking over your community, even though they are the largest population in so yeah.
Yeah, and India has a lot of cults going on there. They loved Sai Baba. He was a fraud. He was not God. He didn't manifest Rolex watches with serial numbers out of thin air due to his spiritual powers. He was using sleight of hand magic techniques. We caught him on video, but
Like there's a similar figure. He is in jail. Baba Ram Rahim.
uh-huh.
He still has a lot of followers, but he has been convicted. He's a convicted felon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sadhguru is all over the US. He's another
Yeah.
bogus God figure.
Yeah.
So
He was
India
accused of
has its
killing.
problems too.
Yeah. That's true. And also like are cults in US, more or less dangerous in 2026, like right in this current, not regime, but like how we are living.
Are
Are
they
they?
more dangerous?
Yes.
So the media tends to sensationalize the violent criminal religious cults.
Mm,
But the bigger topic for me is the issue of undue influence by
yeah.
bad actors. Something that's not covered almost at all is the unethical use of hypnosis.
Mhm.
That's something that I'm an expert in. I've been studying it since the 80s, and online, people are marketing themselves as hypnotherapists, and they have
Wow.
no training as a mental health professional. And they're taking courses, multi-level marketing courses. Um, so they're spending lots of money thinking they're going to have a career
Yeah.
doing hypnosis. It's used by Andrew Tate. It's used by all these pedophiles and perpetrators to use hypnotic techniques on people, and people are oblivious. They think you have to want to be hypnotized or you have to, agree to it. And most hypnosis is being done covertly on people without them even recognizing that it's happening.
These online cult figures like Andrew Tate or any, but they do tap into your something you're insecure about, like if they're targeting men.
So it's really a formula, and we're human beings, so that means we're social beings. It means we need to depend on our senses to take in information.
Mm.
And a lot of the recruitment that's done is using deception and marketing techniques on people. With Andrew Tate, he had a cult where every person you recruited, you'd get a piece of how much money they were paying in. So it's a version of the pyramid scheme,
Yeah.
but it's online.
Yeah.
Um, but so are they more dangerous? Yeah. I mean, my thesis in the cult of Trump is that the cult is made of cults. It's not
Mhm.
just about Trump.
Yeah.
It's there are millions of people in what's called New Apostolic Reformation megachurches, and these pastors say, I'm a prophet and I speak to God, or I'm an apostle, and God told me that Trump won the 2020 election.
Mm.
And other BS like that. And God told me you need to donate $1,000
Mm.
for the ministry, and you'll be blessed, and you'll get $10,000 in return if you're faithful.
Mm.
And they're called prosperity ministers. But there are millions of Americans who were programmed into believing that Trump is God's chosen King
Yeah.
Cyrus figure to save, the world. And it's just mind control cults.
Okay, so like when I was watching the documentary, so this one girl who got out of it, she's like young. She said, um, she said something on the line along the lines like, her parents were born in a lie. She was born in a lie. So when she was talking to Samuel Bateman, that's when she thought of something like, she got this, is this a lie? And that's how she basically said, my whole life was a fiction. So when you realize some, and in comparison to you, like you were recruited when you were 19-year-old, you were an
Right.
educated person, you were writing poetry, you were in Queens, you were in like New
Right.
York. How do you recover from that basically? How do you rebuild from that? And what's the difference? Like this girl, she never knew anything. You knew everything. So, and then in both cases, how do you rebuild from them?
Well, it's harder if you were born into something. For me, I had family, I had friends who helped me reality test. For example, when you come out of a mind control experience, I thought I was depressed and I had a terrible childhood and my father was abusive. And my
Mm.
sisters were like, "You were happy. What are you talking about? You lived in the same house as us, and Daddy would never hurt us." Oh, yes, he was abusive. It's like, give us an example. I couldn't think of one. So, I had family, friends in the community to help me recover.
Mm.
Even so, it took me a year to get my psychological power back. I read a dictionary. I was an English major. And I was reading 2 to 3 books a week before the Moonies, and then I had no books other than the Mooney cult stuff for 2.5 years. My brain was mush. I had to rebuild my power. So when I first got out, I just said, I'm going to go back to college because they told me to drop out, but I'm going to do it in a year so that I can like get my brain back in
Yeah.
order with people. And what was my therapy was largely learning about brainwashing and mind control and unpacking how they hacked it. So I was reading lots of social psychology. I was talking to the top military experts who had studied Chinese communist brainwashing. Um, and then what were the steps? Because I was a leader, so I did it to other people. So I had
Mm.
to remember what were the techniques and then fit it into psychological theory that
Yeah.
existed, etc. And my bite model's based on Leon Festinger's book, When Prophecy Fails,
Yeah.
because he talked about cognitive dissonance theory. He said we have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and we like to have them aligned. We feel very uncomfortable when they're not aligned. And if you can get someone to do an extreme behavior, human nature rationalizes your behavior in order
Yeah.
to feel good about it. So when the people were selling their property to go to the mountaintop to be picked up by the UFO saucer and then it didn't show up, they invested a lot in that belief, right? In that behavior. And then when the cult leader said, well, the aliens told us because you are faithful, you saved the earth from utter destruction.
Oh,
Congratulations.
wow.
They didn't say, you lied to us. We believed you. I lost my house because
Mm.
they were still wanting to believe that all their
Yeah.
sacrifice and investment has a story that makes sense.
That's true. And also, like, again, like coming back to the Samuel Bateman, even he was born into it. So do you think he genuinely believed that he was, prophet, or like he's just a predator? Similarly, like
It's a
Warren.
very good question. If I was a forensic expert, I would do a lot more evaluating who he was before he declared his prophet's
Yeah.
status and all of that. My sense is that he may have had the vision that God has now chosen him, but he knew that Jeffs was alive.
Yeah.
So there was a volitional choice there. So I attribute more ill intent to him than just saying, well, he didn't know any better.
Do you think, like, FLDS cults, like, can they be eradicated, or people are too deep into it, and it's gonna last forever? Like, it will always continue.
It's a really good question. I'm a human rights activist. I'm a therapist. I want to believe that if the resources were exerted, everyone could come out of that cultic belief that Warren Jeffs is the prophet and that even
Yeah.
Joseph Smith was a good
Yeah.
guy. Like Joseph Smith was a pedophile.
Yeah.
The original Mormon who came up with polygamy, he just liked having sex with underage girls and the wives of all of his followers. And he was a total perpetrator person. Um, so everything was based on that lie.
Yeah.
The Mormons are huge. They have millions of followers. They're one of the most politically connected and wealthy cults on earth. And the public still is ignorant that they're a bad group, that they're an authoritarian mind control cult. But that's part of my work is to say, look at this model. It's based on Chinese communist brainwashing. See what you're and the Mormon church is starting to loosen up. They're changing the clothing regulations now because so many people are leaving.
Because, I mean, now they understand, like, but
People are leaving because they're on the internet and and they're learning about other cults and they're like, but that's just like my group has that same pattern. That's why documentaries like Trust Me is so valuable.
yeah.
It's number one on Netflix, the
Yeah.
last I saw. People are looking at it, but it's like, but they're talking about the Jehovah's Witnesses here, or they're talking about the mainstream Mormons. Huh? My
Okay.
objection with all of these documentaries, including this one, is if they included my influence continuum and bite model and had, a deconstruction of the mind control techniques used, then it would serve the public much better. And I even said that to Christine. Maybe we can record something that can be a supplemental part to the documentary, a postscript.
Yeah, that would be
It,
great,
it,
actually.
it would be great. I
Yeah.
reached out to Arc Media who did it. They haven't responded to my email. It's not up to me.
For the
But
podcast, like, how do you?
well, I do podcasts all the time and I'm writing about this stuff all the time. I think it'll help when Christine comes on
Yeah.
with me. I'll probably live stream it. It'll go to YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn and Substack and all of these other places. And hopefully more people will learn about the real stuff. Like
Yeah.
what are the real mechanisms and how can it help protect us in the time ahead?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I hope you get it, or you can just do it
Write
yourself.
a good article. Maybe someone will read it from Arc Media or Netflix and go, we should add one more episode and have
Wow.
Steve sit down with everybody and explain the bite model.
Wow, what a powerful conversation. The biggest takeaway for me, and something that completely reshaped how I view the survivor in Trust Me, the False Prophet, is how Dr. Hassan explained that mind control fundamentally functions as a dissociative disorder. There's a massive psychological difference between being recruited later in life and being born into a cult. When you're raised in that environment from childhood, you have absolutely zero reference for what normal is. And you are systematically stripped from the chance to develop an authentic self or think critically. Breaking free isn't just about waking up to the truth, it's about entirely rebuilding a new identity from the scratch. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.